Senator Blunt swings by KTR Studios to pick up his mail. Good morning, Senator.
I'm glad to be here. I don't want to get behind on my bills.
I know, it's certainly understandable. We don't want senators getting behind on their bills. Yeah.
I have to call that whatever that group is that watches your credit all the time.
LifeLock, yes.
LifeLock.
Yeah, there you go.
Make sure they get it straightened out.
First, let's talk about this downed Malaysian airliner. Can you tell us anything we're not hearing in the news media?
I don't think so. I think this is all pretty open source. It finally seems to be getting the attention of the European countries. You know, you've got all these people from the Netherlands killed, other people who happen to be on that plane killed. There's no way that the separatists would have had this equipment, in my view, without Russia giving it to them. And apparently they gave them only about half of the training they needed.
Right.
You know, and I really don't have any reason to believe that they intended to shoot down a commercial airline, but they certainly intended to shoot down a plane with people on it and kill the people on the plane, which they had done twice previously. And you know, the stories today are that they're collecting the bodies, but they won't release them. They apparently finally put some of them in a refrigerated railroad car. It is a sickening tragedy, and it shows what happens when people don't stand up to people doing the wrong thing. I mean, Putin is clearly performing like the longtime KGB guy he is, and you know, whether it's finally caught up with him or not, it's finally caught up with the world that this is what happens when you let people like that think they can get away with anything. Before you know it, they're trying to get away with just anything, including killing almost 300 people on a commercial airline, kids, parents, people ready for a trip to Southeast Asia for vacation. It's just hard, really. I think it's hard to imagine the tragedy that people will have in their lives of their families forever because the world didn't stand up to Vladimir Putin and what he was doing to encourage these separatists in Ukraine.
It's also hard to believe that Israel and Gaza create some type of bombing campaign, troops on the ground, and that's not a front page story. We had an amazing week last week.
Well, it's a scary week, and you know, there's Condoleezza Rice 2 or 3 months ago had a quote that I intend to use this morning when I'm speaking to the National VFW convention. Which is when the United States decides to leave a leadership vacuum in the world, bad things rush to fill that vacuum. And it would be great if other countries who are friends of ours would step up. That would be a wonderful thing. And in a perfect world, that's what would happen. But clearly that has not happened any time in the post-World War II world that the United States thought we could step back. Bad things fill the vacuum instead of good things. I was at the Munich Security Conference in early February, and the German president, not the prime minister, but sort of their figurehead, head of state, who could float a trial balloon, said, you know, it's 70 years, we're a strong country, it's time we started to act like it. We're going to, including asserting ourselves militarily to make for a better world. All sounded good. Everybody applauded. The reaction was good, but I don't see any evidence that any of that has happened so far, and the Germans and others have to step up, but I think the United States can't assume that's going to happen, or the one thing you can assume is that bad things will happen when we decide to let anything happen that's going to happen.
Joe Biden's going to be in town. You're going to have a chance to hang out and talk with the vice president?
You know, I was just looking at that. I've got to get back to vote in Washington later tonight, and actually my concern was whether or not he keeps me on the ground at the airport longer than not that I don't want to see the vice president of the United States, but I believe I'm going to miss seeing him. I'm going to speak early, and he's going to speak at the VFW convention maybe about 11 o'clock.
I know that health care is a big thing with the veterans. Would that be one of the topics that you're going to be talking about?
Well, it will be. And, you know, I've done some things. Kelly, you and I have talked about what Senator Stabenow from Michigan and I did on mental health. And the veterans groups, particularly the young veterans groups, want more choices. Some of those groups made our bill Excellence in Mental Health, which would allow more fair treatment of behavioral health, just like any other health issue, but they could get it at more places, and that's what they want. The goal here should not be what's good for the Veterans Administration. The goal here should be what's good for veterans. And it's unacceptable. I saw a quote in the Post-Dispatch one day last week, a soldier saying, "I know how to fight a war, but I don't know how to fight the system that's supposed to take care of me." And the other thing I'd say too, not only does this betray the trust that Americans and veterans have put in the Veterans Administration, but it actually betrays all the good people at the Veterans Administration that are doing everything they can to provide great care. I mean, this the system's bad. The Cochrane Hospital, number 5 out of 141 healthcare systems in the country, Cochrane was the 5th worst in terms of waiting to get into the hospital. But there are lots of people at that facility who work there every day who are doing everything they can. How do you think, I'm wondering how they feel about how this system that they've dedicated themselves to and the veterans that they've dedicated themselves to now looks so bad because some significant number of people in that system turned their head, refused to manage, let people put things in the bottom desk drawer instead of at the top of the file when you need to get in and get your health care taken care of.
How much was it that the system was just overloaded and not prepared for the amount of veterans who were coming back? And that they just didn't have the resources, and so it doesn't matter what they did, they just couldn't they couldn't accommodate all the people coming in.
Well, the president said in April that the VA was the best resource part of his government. Easy to say that they don't have the funding, but actually the Veterans Administration funding's increased pretty dramatically in recent years, and even more importantly, maybe, McGraw, they had the capacity at all of these facilities to send people somewhere else if they thought they couldn't deal with them or deal with them in a timely way. The Veterans Facility in Columbia, the Truman Center, has the University of Missouri Hospital right there across the parking lot. They had the authority to send anybody they wanted to that hospital, and the federal government would pay the Medicare rate at that hospital. So I think it's mismanagement, it's outrageous, and there's no reason, there's all kinds of reason why people are outraged, and they should be by this.
While we have you here, why don't you make a little noise and news. You're always making noise.
There you go.
News I don't know about.
Coming from you, that's really quite a compliment.
You betcha.
Always making noise. Here I am,
Are you planning on running for re-election?
I'm planning on just doing everything I can to do my job, and I don't know why I wouldn't run for re-election, but it's too early.
So you're up 2 more years after this. Yeah, right.
2016.
Yeah, okay. But you don't see
a
reason.
But it's pretty darn frustrating, and I do hope that the Senate begins to function again, whether my side takes over and we have a different Senate leader or Harry Reid finally sees the light. But we cannot continue just to not do what needs to be done in an open, public way, with full debate, and I'm hoping we can move beyond where we are in the Senate, no matter what happens in this election.
You've seen some contentious times in your years in Washington with the House and now in the Senate. Is this the worst you've ever seen it?
Certainly the least productive I've ever seen it, and I think the worst. Now, the people in the Senate are not bad. I mean, there are 100 people there. Most of them have had great accomplishments in their life. They got elected to the United States Senate. There aren't enough of us to be full-time mad at everybody. I mean, they're not all a couple of them you could probably put on a pretty difficult list to deal with. But it's not that the people are bad. It's just that the system has not worked for so long. The appropriations process, which for 200 years, now, you say appropriations, people start yawning. They think, well, how important could that be? That's how we decide what our national priorities are, where we decide how to spend the money. And it's the real ultimate power of the Congress, the power of the purse. For 8 years, the Senate hasn't done the appropriations work the way it was done the previous 200, where bills are brought to the floor. Every member can offer any amendment they want to spend that money and that bill in a different way or not spend it at all, and you have that debate. And
why has that not happened?
Harry Reid doesn't want his members to take hard votes, so we don't really have any amendments in the Senate on virtually anything. So last week, as we haven't done a single appropriations bill yet. The House was doing their 7th bill. I don't know how many amendments they had last week, but I did happen to talk to Hal Rogers, the House chairman, the week before, trying to work through a problem and get something done. And he said, we've got the transportation bill this week, the spending bill. We've got 220 amendments. 220 amendments. We're going to work through all of them. Maybe don't have to vote on all of them by the end of the week, but we're going to work through all of them. In the Senate, the year that started July 1 last year through the 4th of July this year, Republicans had 11 amendments with roll call votes, 11, and Democrats had 8. So last week, the House was dealing with 220 amendments. Last year, there were 19 roll call votes on amendments in the United States Senate and nothing getting done. It's just ridiculous. It has to stop. And no matter what happens in this election, I don't want to see us continue to not get the job done.
So is there an outside chance that it gets so frustrating you just wash your hands and say, I'm not going to run again?
That's what I was
That would be making news.
That would.
All right, fair enough. I tried. I do what I can. Senator Roy Blunt, the mail's waiting for you as always. Always a pleasure. Thanks for checking in.
Good to see all of you.
You got it.
8:47
traffic, weather, sports. Straight ahead. Big fight.